Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our once a quarter English episode. My guest today is Mrs. Shanil Ahmed, who is the founder of an Instagram account called Brave Muslim Parents. So let's us welcome her into the episode, and then we our wonderful journey. Just to let you know, when I was preparing for this, hello, assalamu alaikum, sister. I was just about telling them that when preparing for this lecture and knowing more about you, I wish that you are my neighbor. I wish that I have still children at home to really follow your footsteps in raising them. MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. طيب, let me introduce you, then give you the floor. Sister Shanil Ahmed is a certified child sleep educator and parent mentor. She was a youth leader for 10 years inside and outside the mosque. She's passionate about equipping parents like us with practical tools to raise resilient children. And that resilient children is one of our milestones of today's journey. And she gives one-to-one support to parents and mentor them through her platform, Brave Muslim Parent. She also provides one-to-one mentoring to marital couples, husband and wife, to transform their relationship with children, with their kids, and start parenting out of faith rather than out of fear. I love that slogan. I wish I caught that up and put it as the episode title. She lives in South California with her husband and 4 children whom she is homeschooling. Maybe Shahnila, next episode will be about homeschooling.
Yeah.
Welcome on board.
Jazakallah khair for having me. This is such an honor. And I know that you wanted to talk about so many different topics. Yes. So just go ahead and ask me, certain questions, and we can.
Let me first introduce the audience to your Brave Muslim Parents Instagram account, and then we go into the topic of today's meeting. Yeah. So what drove you to start the Brave Muslim Parent Instagram account?
Actually, I was around kids, most of my life, and I really thought I knew everything there is to be a mother until I had my own kids. And then when I had my own kids and the new challenges, and a lot of times I would think, and so I really delved into that. I read a lot. I attended talks. I took workshops. I took seminars. I took all the classes, and it was really my passion. It became my passion just for myself to go through and really understand my kids and all the struggles that I went through and overcame. And I thought, you know what? I see other parents going through that, and they don't have to. There's a solution.
So that platform is your way of sharing your experience and the knowledge you acquired in these challenges to other parents on this. Wonderful. Like Shahnila, our session today, or our seminar today, it's called Nurturing Fitra, which is in principle, it means that this is the way we suggest, this is what we recommend, versus what is really taking place as a parenting style nowadays. So if you wanna, let's dive into what is the current situation that we don't agree that it is nurturing the fitrah of our children.
So just the current situation, if we look around us, and from, working with youth and being online and seeing the current global situation of kids. These are the times where, and this is not to get everybody scared or feel like, oh my gosh, and instill fear. This is information, and it is to look at things with a clear view, so then we can approach it. We can look at it objectively and say, okay, now let's find solutions. So some of the problems that we see around us is, one, that we have the highest probably rate of depression and anxiety in kids, obesity in kids. We see suicide going on now in our Muslim communities as well, in children.
Yes.
We see a lot of mental health issues are rising, as well as the high rate of pornography consumption. That is really, there's an account, it's called Fight the New Drug. That is the new drug.
Sadly.
And kids as early as 7 to 11 for sure, most kids by age 11, 10 or 11 are already exposed to pornography. And this is a really big challenge, especially in the Muslim countries. Out of the top 10 countries where they're viewing pornography the most, 7 of them are Muslim countries. You know, so there's a lot going on in our society. And then with the phones, with technology, you know, technology is amazing. I'm not against technology. We're doing this right now because of this, right? But so now I feel like parents we have such a hard role. We have it really hard. And also our kids have it really hard too.
Yes.
You know, they're just the other day, somebody called me saying that, you know, this person doesn't have a girlfriend. And so in school, they're getting teased and people are saying that they're gay. So our teens, they have it really tough and they're in a very hypersexualized world.
Definitely.
So what we do in our home is very, very, very important.
And I think especially on this angle where you're talking about pornography and the sexual education, most Muslim parents don't recognize that if they shut down or conceal talking about these issues, it's naturally that the children are curious about it, so they will go and find the answers. You shutting them up does not mean it's going to go away, but you're going to just drive them to other sources. I will share with you, I think in 2019 or no, late 2018, I did an opinion polling in a private college, and I asked the students who are ranging between 16 to 24, where do you get your information about sex? 78% pornography sites.
SubhanAllah. And just to make it
54% from rated R movies. And imagine if they went into marriage or continued into life, believing that that information that they gathered is the actual depiction of life, then that's why the other statistics about depression and anxiety and suicide. Right. And I want to ask you, why you put the word brave in front of Muslim parents?
Because I think talking about these things, it takes a lot of courage.
Okay.
It requires for us to come out of our comfort zone. Okay. It requires us to look at ourselves, and maybe there's some things that we grew up with that were great, but maybe there's some things, methods that we grew up with that our parents did, it wasn't good.
Absolutely.
We love our parents. They did the best that they can. We all, as parents, we all love our kids. We all want the best for them. We all make dua for them to succeed in deen and dunya. We all want that. But is our method correct? And maybe the methods that our loving parents did with us, they didn't know either. They didn't know that was the best, you know. And my mom passed away 10 years ago, but something that as I was learning, and I had my son, he was little, and she told me, she's like, you know what? I didn't know about these classes. I didn't know about these books, but you do. So it's your obligation to learn. You are obligated to go to these classes. You have to get mentorship. You have to get counseling, because now it's an obligation on you if you want to raise your kids right.
Absolutely. And I always tell parents, if you still believe that's the methods that you were parented by worked with you, it does not mean that it is absolutely the correct methods for the new generation. It worked with you for a reason, but that we have to really reflect on the next one. Shahnila, I received one day a WhatsApp message A friend of mine is forwarding someone who's saying, what about these parenting platforms who talks about resilient kids? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لَيَعْبُدُونَ. We are here with the purpose of servitude, and we have to let them be obedient. Our role as parents is to teach them obedience. So I would like to say how obedience fits into the nurturing Fitra approach. If you could share that with us.
Yes, I love this question. So I would ask that person, obedience to who and what?
Absolutely.
Obedience to who and what? Is it because a lot of times the kids who are parent pleasers, who have to do all types of things to please their parents, they grow up to be people pleasers. And that's very different than Allah pleasers. Because you can't be a people pleaser and an Allah pleaser. You know, what is your intention? Yes. Is your intention, you're praying like this, or you're saying yes to all these things? Is it because this is what Allah wants me to do? Or is it because everybody's going to see this and they're going to think highly of me? So is it really deeply to please people? And I can say this is because I used to be a people pleaser. And I did a lot of reflection on myself to realize this. And I realized that, you know, a lot of times then I started questioning myself. Why am I really doing this? What is my intention? What is my intention behind this? And if it doesn't, does it really lead to Allah or does it not?
Okay.
And when I did that, then I would notice that, you know what, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. So as Muslims, our intentions matter, you know, our intentions have to be correct. Our actions are based on our intentions, based on the hadith. So what is our intention? Is it really for everyone to say that, oh, your son is amazing? Or is it to please Allah? What is it? So that's one of the things.
So we should teach them obedience to Allah. We should not make them an obedient creature. So there is a difference.
Yes.
An obedient creature means similar, like I please my mom, I will please the guard, I will please the instructor, I will please my peers, I will please good people and bad people. But once we are creating that correlation or relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the certitude comes automatically, but comes with pride and dignity, comes with self-preservation, comes with self-purification rather than breaking ourselves.
Exactly. And the whole concept of obedience, and you can't even make your kids obey Allah. Because yes, and when they're little, you can make them pray, you can force them to pray. But one day they're going to get older, and are they going to pray that? So, you know, even if like somebody came and said something, oh, I saw your children doing this, that's so great. But to me, it didn't, I was thinking, it doesn't matter. First of all, they're young kids, they're not even held accountable. Will they be doing that when they're 20, 30, 40, 50? You know, that's what I want to instill in their hearts.
So obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a choice they will make when they are accountable. So what I have to do is to introduce Allah to them, let them know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it's time for them to make that decision to obey or not to obey, I've done my part. So you are even correcting me that what we are doing to our children right now is breaking them, making them people pleasers rather than making them acquire the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's not a skill we acquire, it's a choice. You bring yourself to obey. Okay, amazing.
And and it comes from their heart, you know, so we can't force our kids to be Muslim. We can't, because even if they love Allah and you're having a good environment for them at home, there comes a point in every person's life when they reach maybe in their 20s, maybe puberty, there comes a time when they question. Just like Prophet Ibrahim, he questioned, what is this? Who is my Lord? You know? And so what you could do is nurture an environment where they know, and then they can feel it. So then when they have to make that choice, it's a positive choice. They're going to make the obvious choice, and they're going to go into themselves. They're going to ask themselves that. and they're going to look into their Fitrah, and they're not going to see this negative thing. They're not going to correlate prayer to my mom yelling and screaming and threatening me that I'm going to go to hell if I don't pray. Versus it's a loving environment.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Islam is supposed to be peaceful. It's supposed to be, you know, you want them to have this feeling of that Allah loves me, Allah made me worthy, Allah made me lovable, Allah made me in the best of form, and I'm here. And because of all of that, of course, I want to serve Allah. You know, Allah is the source of peace. How can we instill that if we have negativity, if our relationship with our kids aren't being nurtured in that way?
So if
And
we are not, now you are shaking the common belief in Muslim parents' minds that what is type, if I'm not gonna raise obedient children, what I'm supposed to do? What is the alternative?
so then I would ask, why did we have kids? And for everyone is different. Why did we have children? And part of it is just a natural thing, right? Because procreation is part of as us as a creation we're supposed to do. But many people had kids because they find a joy in that. They find a joy, you know, they want to raise, you know, they want someone to love and they want someone to love them. Why are children a blessing? Because that love that we have with them and for them. You know, so let's say that, you know, if our job was to just make obedient children, and that's it. So let's say they were obedient to Allah, but for whatever reason, they don't have good relationships with us. You know, that would still hurt us. So we want them to have a good relationship with Allah and us. But
And this is one of the audience question. She said, why you're saying that? Don't we supposed to please our parent in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? أليس رضا الوالدين من رضا الله. So I think the pleasing of parent, I think it's also one of the most common notion that is mispracticed and misunderstood and misused. So if you could clarify to her, how come we're saying you still treat your parents right, yet you're not a people pleaser?
Yeah. So you still treat your parents right, but do we want our kids to treat our parents right just for show, or do we really want them to show us? What is their intention? Rolling our eyes or saying, oh, I hate going to my mom's, but fine, you know, we're supposed to in Islam, and I'm just going to go there and I'm going to pretend that I love her. Or do we really want them from the depths of our heart? When we pass away, do we want them to make dua for us? Do we want them to love us?
Okay.
So there's a difference, right? So you can't make somebody, just like we can't make our kids when they grow up. Can we make them marry somebody? Can we make them love someone? Can we say, you have to obey me? You have to respect me? That's not how we get respect, right? So we have to earn that respect. And part of it we already have. We already have that with Allah, that He told us that. So as they get older and they have resentment, but maybe their memory is that, you know what, why should I be like that? My parents hurt me. They said hurtful things to me. They did hurtful things to me.
Because those parents were trying to make their children obedient.
Yes.
Obeying us, respecting us was the mandate, was the agenda. So they broke the true selves in their children, and then they expect that obedience will follow for the rest of their life. But I want to build something from what we covered so far. So you're saying that the current way of raising children is breaking their fitrah. It's not nurturing them, but rather than giving you a quick fixed result, but these results are not lasting. And being there, loving and making our children feel lovable and acceptable, and taking them to Allah, to understand Allah, so they are ready to make their own decision, which is somewhat the foundation for being resilient, then they will be able to make the decision. So this lady who's asked us, Isn't pleasing our parent part of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Mm.
If we build the first foundational relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala correctly, then you will know how and when and what to please your parent. Pleasing them is not an infinite platform. There are criteria, guidelines, framework that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us. It does not mean to enslave ourselves to them.
Exactly. And you know what happens is that a lot of times we'll tell the kids, you have to respect me. We expect that from them, but we don't give it back to them. We punish them, we hit them, we hurt them. And then when they get older and they can make their own decision, then they say, you know what? And then they think, you know what? I don't want this. I don't want any of this. And if you say that Allah is loving, Allah is kind, you're not showing that. You're not modeling that at home.
So regardless how many times we repeat it, it will not sink until we model that to them. So they follow what we do, our actions.
And our kids are just like, this analogy is of a garden. When you have a garden and you have a flower and the flower isn't growing correctly, what do? Yell at it, scream at it, cut off its petals? No, you nurture the environment around it. You see if this plant needs more water. You see, is it because of the sunlight? Do I have to put it in a pot and take it inside? How can I nurture the environment that it lives in so it can thrive? Because that's how Allah made us, right? Allah made us to thrive. So we're just caretakers of this. And, we think that we're going to mold and shape the child. But Allah blew life into our child, and He made him or her with their temperament, with their personalities, when they're going to be born, what their risk is going to be, everything about them. He already gave us that child. And what we have to do is nurture it and take care of it, just like the flower and the environment, so it can be the way that Allah created them. Absolutely. And I think if we look at it in a different way like that, then we can say, okay, I can't force my child to be obedient, but I can nurture him so naturally he will be.
Absolutely. Okay, then I'm excited to start the journey of nurturing Fitra. Shall we start to communicate with our audience how we are suggesting to them that this nurturing Fitra parenting style start with? We've prepared about 6 or 7 pointers. So to me, so far, we've already been talking about the first step, which is building the relationship with them rather than breaking them. So let's take it from there.
Yeah. And I think it really starts with knowing ourselves. Knowing ourselves and our triggers. Because let's say a child says no to us and we get frustrated. We're just like, no, you have to do this. And the reason why is that we're not really connected to our child. We are doing 5, 6 different things. We have so many roles to play and obligations. And we're not looking at the child for what they need or what they are telling us what they need. So we get frustrated with them. And that's something that I see a lot is that, my child's not listening to me. That's the number one complaint all parents have. My child won't listen. And you know what the number one complaint of kids are? That my parents won't listen. So who has to do it first? And we think that we're the parents, they should listen to us. But I say, we're the parents, we're the adults. We're the ones whose brain is completely developed, and we can regulate our emotions. We should be able to. So we start. It starts with us because we're the leader. We're leading them. So a good leader leads them by showing and modeling.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the pillars is that model to them. And we're not modeling, we're modeling the opposite. And sometimes as our kids get older, they hold up a mirror to us. They hold up a mirror to us to show us through their actions what they're learning. And another thing is that not to take it personally. Everything that they say or do when they're young, not to take it personally. And we do that, so our maybe a child is upset.
Can we bring examples so we make it
yes. So let's say a child is upset and they tell you, or let's say you give them their food and they throw it. And you're just like, subhanallah, like, what is this? This is unacceptable. How can you do that? You know, so we get triggered, you know, we're like, oh my God, this is unacceptable. You're 7 years old. How could you do this?
But of
You
course,
know,
not
and
in your calmness. Tone
exactly.
of
So we're
voice
thinking
high
this.
and
Yeah.
tantrums, yes. Yeah.
So they're having a tantrum, and then we start yelling and controlling their tantrum. So one of the things is that we have to understand the child developmentally where they are. You know, we know, like for a baby, right? A 3-month-old, 4-month-old, if you say, what is the baby doing? It's like, oh, they're learning to roll over. And then if you don't know that at 6-7 months they're probably crawling, then you're like, what is this? What are they doing? You know, and if your expectation is they should just sit there and lay and sleep and wake up and eat, but they're crawling, you would be alarmed. You would say, what is going on? But if we tell you developmentally, this is fine, they're supposed to do this. A 1-year-old will put stuff in his mouth. That's okay because they, you know, that's what they do to feel sensory. So you have to make sure all the little things are outside. They can't, you know, they can't find a small bead because they're going to put it in our mouth. So what do? We take the bead and remove it. So the child doesn't, you know, put something unsafe in their mouth. We know that. So there are developmental milestones for 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 13-year-old. So we have to understand our child past the infant age. So the same thing, if I know that, okay, a kid can be impulsive. The area of their brain where it's regulating, you know, they're pausing, that's not developed yet. So he's gonna be angry and he may do that. So we have to be calm. And that's the hard part, right? Where we get triggered and
in layman term, knowing what to expect will help us really manage our reaction. So when you just gave us the example of a child who's 6 months old started to crawl, if I'm aware that this is the next step for that child, then I will be dealing with that in the most natural way of doing so. You mentioned the word temperament. So for me, I feel every time as a parent, I hear the word temperament, understanding the different temperament of children, I feel like, oh, do I have to read a book or go and attend training for me to figure out the temperament of my child or how I deal with that child? So let us shed
I
some
would say
light
the
on
best thing is to know your child, to look at your child, to really pay attention to our child. Nobody needs a degree in this. We have to just make time for it. We have to have downtime. Like if we're always busy, we can't do this. But if we notice our child, like, hey, you know what? I'm noticing things in my kids. You know, I'm noticing that this person, the facial expression, what they do, their nuance, you know, all these little things that they do. I know my daughter, if she feels sad or upset about something, she's the type of, her personality and her temperament is sensitive. So I'm going to go hug her. And when I hug her, in 60 seconds, everything is fine. For my son, he doesn't like the hug, but he likes me to play with him. So when I know that, you know, he's having a bad day, so then I go sit by whatever he's doing. And I might stroke his hair and I might say, oh, what are you doing? Oh, and ask a few questions about what he's drawing. And then he feels heard and seen. And then I can, you know, so our approach, how do we know what's going on with them? So when my son threw the thing, was he hungry? Was he tired? Was he having a bad day? What was bothering him? So all behavior, and this is something that if we just can know this, then it's going to help us so much, is that all behavior is like an iceberg. You know, we are in the ocean and we see this white thing and it looks small, but inside is huge. So our job as a parent, whether we choose to accept it or not, is to find out what's underneath the iceberg. The behavior is the iceberg, the hitting, the throwing, the mean, it's the symptom, you know, and we have to figure out the real issue.
On the Knowledge Family platform, we have a diagram of this iceberg because it keeps coming up in our session. So to me is we keep asserting to parents, whatever you experience with your child is just what you see on the surface. You have to be calm. You have to be a good observant. You have to have a time down with your child in order for you to decipher or peel off these layers to understand what is behind those behavior. No child is born evil. That evilness that is perceived by us is us reading our own emotions and our triggers rather than the child need. So I noticed you just said, for example, I will hug my daughter but play with my son. So you as a parent automatically became conscious of the differences in personality and needs. So do you build that up since they're infant, or do you use an instrument to find that out?
No, I was just observant. So I'm observant of myself. You know how we talked about the iceberg? And sometimes we have barriers to look beneath that. If we can't get past the behavior, then we cannot find what's underneath that. We get stuck in the behavior. You know, like, well, he can't throw anything. He can't throw food. That's haram. You know, he cannot throw food. I don't care why he's doing it. He just can't do that. That's stuck on the behavior. And one thing that I think is beautiful about this method of looking underneath to the real issue is that in Islam, the way it's set up is everything, rules that we have in place, things that we do, it is to always get to the root cause of things, right? The root. We eliminate it from the root cause. We have to look at that. And the root is...
Amazingly, the example that you mentioned, I think it's even worse when we implement when it comes to things related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are fearing for our children and want them to connect with Allah through salah. We know the importance of salah. So we hit them to pray. We force them to do that without that understanding. And then we don't realize that we send them a very negative message about prayer. So
and I go
and work with parents, and I tell them, be patient. Not praying means there is lack of information, not connected. Work on that. So she will say, but then how about the next 3-4 days or 2 weeks that you want me to rebuild that strategy in, and those old prayers that is missed? Okay, it's missed. They don't understand that as long as you take time off and work that strategy, the problem will continue for the life.
And that happened to me where we were praying together and my son said, it's so boring. I hate praying. It's boring. And you take it as information like, okay, that means he's not connected to prayer. That means he's telling me that he doesn't like to do the motions without knowing. So what did we do? I said that to my husband. I said, so now we have to talk about what the prayer means. What is behind the prayer? What is bring in the spirituality inside of it? So we have to connect him spiritually. We have to connect his heart to prayer. So let's work on doing that. So don't call him. Call him, and if he comes, fine. If he doesn't, leave it. Let's work on that. And then he'll come on his own. And then once that was instilled, he said, you know what? Wake me up for Fajr. And on his own. We didn't tell him that, you have to wake up because he's not at the age that he has to, but he said, I want you to wake me up.
Because you put a strategy, you observed, you heard, you diagnosed, you did not personalize, and then you gave yourself a buffer time. It's the learning curve for him to acquire that knowledge and become himself that. Thus, I tell parents, don't wait till they are accountable for prayer and start being picky about it. 7 is the age where you instill the meaning. So you have full 3 years for them to miss prayer and for you to instill meaning rather than you just show up when they're 10 and say, I'll beat you up if you don't pray.
Yeah. And you know what? At that time, if we don't pray at 15, Allah doesn't beat us up. Allah isn't beating us up. He doesn't just take out our oxygen, so we don't know that when later on they're going to. Because even if they come to the age of accountability, they're not perfect. They're human. They're going to make mistakes. That's part of their journey. And we did that too. There were things that we did after we didn't do everything perfectly. There were some things, and instead of being offended and taking it personally, I would say be curious. What's really going on? How can I be very curious? As parents, that's one of our jobs, to be curious instead of being reactive.
Okay. So one of the people following us is asking you how to connect them to God.
And depending on how old they are, but this can work with everybody, is really reflecting yourself and with them versus reading a book. I would say share your heart. What do you love about Allah? Personalize it. Touch their heart with your story. Sometimes we're not reading a textbook, and even the way Allah introduces us, Allah could have said, I'm your Lord, obey me. That's it. I'm not going to talk about my names and attributes. I don't have to. Allah doesn't have to. But He tells us why. Why does He tell us about all the names, beautiful names and attributes? Because to connect, Allah wants us to connect with Him at a deeper level. So He tells us about all the attributes. He wants us to know that He is the most merciful, that He is the source of peace. He wants us to know why He is the King. And also when He introduces us to Him in the name of Allah, He tells us what? That He's the most compassionate, the most merciful to creation and to His believers. So when I told my kids that, I said that no matter what happens, because that's something I want them to have when I leave, when I'm not next to them in their life, that no matter what happens, no matter what you do, Allah is always there for you. Allah will never leave you. You can, no matter what sins you commit, because we're all sinners. We don't want them to get stuck in, oh no, what now? Well, I'm this terrible person. No matter what you do, you can always turn back to Allah because He is the most merciful. Beautiful. You can always, in life, as you get older.
Shanil, I would like to share two stories. One of the mother, her son was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. And he found out that one of his classmates invited the whole class except him to a party or birthday party or something. And that party was supposed to be fun, camping and barbecue and swimming and so forth. So he really wanted to go. So he came home, his heart is broken and he feels rejected and so forth. So his mother said, how about you keep addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His name is the Mender, Al-Jabbar. So keep, Ya Jabbar, Ujburni, mend my heart, Ya Jabbar. And she gave them rose beads for him, subha, to say that. And he fell asleep because she told him you have to repeat that 100 times or something like that. So he fell asleep and he woke up. So she said, how do you feel now? He said, about what? She said, you went to sleep feeling heartbroken. He said, didn't you say Jabbar will mend my heart? So it happened. Another mother is telling me that she was on a camping trip with her children, and the youngest daughter was very much fearful of insects and snakes in the forest. So she told them that when we say أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق يا أرض ربي وربك الله أعوذ بالله من شرك وشر ما يدب عليك, and she's blown on them and made mu'awadat, and they walked, and it was a safe journey. So the next day when she was going to school, she said, Mama, can I use the same prayer for protection from insects? So that positive experience made them know that when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the protector, the mender, the compassionate, when they're children, of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will welcome their experience to connect and will make it a very rememberable or engraved in their mind. Like child need, we didn't talk about child need.
The child's needs? Is that what you said?
We take into account the child need in order for us to nurture the Fitrah.
Yeah, and this is this is actually a blessing of behavior or misbehavior. There are kids in so many different ways. They're going to tell us what they need. And that's the beauty. We don't have to go everywhere else to search for it. We can look at our kids. They'll tell us what they need, but they won't ask for it in the most sweetest and humblest and graceful ways. The kids who need the most ask for it in the roughest ways. So again, if we look behind the behavior and figure out what do they really need, and all kids want to be heard, and see, everybody, all people, the way we're created, we want to be heard and we want to be seen. Whether it's with our spouse, our other family members, coworkers, our kids need to be seen. So how do we do this? And this is the beauty of the Sunnah, because we don't have to look for anything else. How did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how did he look at people? The story of the boy whose bird died, the story of and how the Prophet, what did he do? He didn't have to. He could have said, we'll get you a new bird. It's okay. He didn't. He heard him. He listened. He validated him. And he made dua for him. That's it. He didn't. And sometimes we feel like we have to fix something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes our kids just want us to be there and know that we understand them.
Can you give us an example? What do you mean by they will tell us what they need, but in the roughest way?
So that example of my son when he threw the bread at me, where he was hungry, so he needed food. But that morning, I know that when he came down, I was telling him, okay, what do you want for breakfast? What do you, just directing him. And I didn't go to him and like fill his cup in the morning, which is he woke up and he saw me with a younger brother. He saw me with a younger brother, me hugging him and kissing him. And then I started making breakfast and I didn't hug and kiss him. So I realized, I'm like, you know what? I have to be mindful of that. He wants a hug in the morning too. So now when he wakes up, the first thing that I do is I hug them and I kiss them and I say, how did they sleep? Were you cold? Or, just to get their emotional bucket full. And then I'll ask him, are you ready for breakfast? Whatever it is. So I realized with that son that he needs that too. Just because he comes across as independent and he doesn't care, it doesn't mean that he doesn't need my affection.
Absolutely. And that also goes back to the iceberg. So every action, it irritates us. They're trying, our children is trying to communicate something to us, that there is a need that was not fulfilled, fill it for me. And I see most parents tell them, tell me what you need. Don't throw a temperament. Tell me what you need. How could a child communicate his need or her need? It's an impossible mission.
Exactly. And even us, sometimes we feel something, but we don't know how to put into words.
Absolutely.
We have this feeling and we can't. And sometimes if we think that we're going to start talking, then we're going to just cry. And we're holding back our tears. And so we have to know that. So that's one of the things. And another thing that I'll tell you is that where there's something that I like to, that I've learned, is called the aggression wheel. The wheel of like how kids get into aggression. So sometimes if something happens to a child, let's say their needs are met, they're fine, and something happens where somebody takes their toy away. His brother takes his things, or somebody takes something from him. Then three things can happen, and you can think of it as a roundabout, where you're driving in the first exit. So first thing that can happen is that something gets resolved. The other brother gives him something else, or he leaves the truck and he says, okay, fine, you can have it. Or he goes on to the next thing and he doesn't mind. He doesn't want that car anyways. But let's say he's still upset that his brother took his car, his toy. Mm-hmm. Then the second thing can happen is that he can get frustrated and he starts crying. He lets it out in tears, or he's telling his parents and he's crying. And if he doesn't cry, and he's angry, but he doesn't release it, then the third thing that can happen is he can get aggressive. He can go hit that brother. He can, use force. Or later on, let's say that's at school, later on he comes home and he's being aggressive with his siblings, or you're telling him, okay, get ready, take off your shoes, and he takes off his shoes and he throws it around and he's showing this aggression. So we have to see where this aggression came from. What is the source of it? And it could, and sometimes they're not going to tell you that, I'm really upset because this happened. We have to draw it out of them.
With
but in a way,
questioning, with hugs,
yes,
with being patient with
yes,
them.
yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. So,
and also role playing, if we're playing with them and we have toy cars and we can role play like, oh, I'm going to take this or I'm going to take that. And then sometimes through playing, they'll tell us this happened. And so independent play is really important for kids because that releases all these things, that the tension that they're holding inside.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something. You told me we have to keep in mind, what are we competing with as a parent? So the invites that you are sending today to the audience, that you have to change your parenting style and methods to be nurturing rather than bringing in obedience, because we are competing with something that we should take into account, right?
Mm-hmm. And that is, a lot of it is the entertainment. Where we are competing against their games, the games that are very enticing. We're competing, and then our older kids have their phone. So, you don't want to listen the whole years as they were growing up. You don't want to listen. It's okay, because you know what? Your son found this girl who's able to listen. And she's not criticizing him. She's not yelling at him. She's not telling him what to do. She's just listening. And that's a need that was there and it didn't get full. So it's going to be really hard for you what are you going to do now? Another thing is that when they're so attached to their peers, how is another 15-year-old going to give really good advice? They're a child themselves. They're going through things themselves. Then how is, so they're getting advice from their friends. If something happens, like let's say your teenager sees, oh, this girl keeps giving me her phone number and I know I shouldn't take it. What should I do? What is their friend going to say versus what you would say? Is it even possible for your son or daughter to come to you and say, hey, you know what, Mama, this girl, she's beautiful and she's giving me attention. She wants me to call her. It's really difficult for me. Are we raising our kids to be able to come to us?
So what you are saying, that one of the greatest challenges that we live in as parents in the 21st century is that everything now turned into an entertainment, and that is really adjusting the pace in which our children program their attention, their attachment, and so forth.
Yes,
so
yes.
If we did not work on having a close relationship and have them attached to us and we listen to them, they will search for someone else or something else to be attached, because it is their innate nature to seek that. I remember once we presented Dr. Gordon Neufeld research on Hold On to Your Kids, and he was talking about this peer culture, and I think some of our audience misinterpreted what we're saying. It's not like we're saying we have to hold on to the parent culture and the tradition, the negative and the past, but we're saying that be there to influence them. It's a space of influence rather than a tradition passing from one generation to another.
Yeah.
Not being
and we're leading them. And a lot of what, that book is amazing. I would recommend every parent to read that book. It's a very deep book. And I found it so in alignment with Islam, because we want to influence our kids. We want to be our kids' number one influencer. We don't want somebody on TikTok to be their influencer or somebody else who's telling them what to do or how to do it. We want them to come to us. So how do we do that? By having this open and nurturing relationship. We can still set limits. We can still say no. We can still say, you really want to go to your friend's house, all your other friends are going, but we can't because we have a prior commitment. I know I'm so sorry. I wish we didn't have this other family obligation that we're committed to. We have to go. I'm sorry you can't go to your friends. Maybe we can do something else with them later. And that child is frustrated and mad, and just being okay with that. Let him feel that frustration. He'll get past it, and we just have to be there and be calm.
Absolutely. I wanted to mention an example. What were you saying about the children, not the influence of the children? It skipped my mind right now.
Yeah, so the back to that, right? When we were talking about what's influencing them and other peers, the devices, it's not, so a lot of things seem boring to them. So limiting that is really, really important. We're not giving our kids full access to that. What they really want is us.
Absolutely.
They want us. They always wanted us, and they need us, and they want us. If they don't get us, they'll fill themselves up with all these other things, and they're a distraction.
And then if we are there building that relationship with them with kindness, kindness is not in contradiction with firmness as well.
Yes.
Then they will choose to be close and to please us, and that will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the way to achieve that, not by force, not by breaking them, but rather than being worthy of that to them and really making them connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From my experience, any person that's really added to my life something that brought me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, automatically I feel the emotion attachment to that person, as if that person gave me the gift of light. So automatically I feel in debt to that person rather than, yes, I remembered what I wanted to say. When you say two points you mentioned today about being a good observant of our children to figure out their type of temperament and to understand their child needs, the story really broke my heart. I was in one of those play centers, Rawa'i al-Maktabat, it's called stationery something, and I saw an old friend of mine from high school. So I saw that, are you here with your children? She said, yes, that is my boy and this is my girl. And said, and who are those children playing with them? She said, random kids, they met here. And she went to get us coffee or something to drink, and the maid, the nanny, was sitting with us on the table. And the nanny said, that girl, her name is Layla. It's her classmate. They made a deal to meet today here, and that boy is her. So the nanny knew about the people. The mother did not knew about that people. So the girl came to her mother, said, come and say hello to Auntie Ala. And she said, I said, which year are you? And the mother said, 6th or 7th grade. So the nanny said 7th grade. And so for me, the nanny knew about the girl more than her mother, because sometimes I think in some areas in the Muslim nation, we leave them to maids and nannies to raise them other than us, not only to entertainment and PlayStation and peers, but also to add a caregiver, and they will be adjusted and attached to that caregiver, but with a negative feeling, that of abandonment. It's not like, oh, alhamdulillah, Rabbana took my mother but gave me a loving nanny. It will feel the feeling of abandonment. Absolutely.
And I think that we have to realize that that's what our kids want, is us, not a perfect person. They want us. They want our hearts, and they want to know that we don't judge them. We love them unconditionally. That's what they need.
And to summarize is that let us decide what we want for our children and model that for them. So can you give us,
and I think and also focusing on and focusing on our efforts, not the result. The result is we want them to grow up to be an amazing Muslim. That is a result that's not up to us. That's up to Allah. We focus on our efforts. We're not going to be just, if we did everything right, but for whatever reason, it was written that this child is going to be like this or be like that. That's not up to us. We can't control that. Allah gave us the responsibility to raise our kids. He didn't give us control over them.
Beautiful.
So we have to differentiate that. We can't control them. As they get older, they're going to make it known that, and they're going to rebel more. We nurture this environment in them that we want, and they can see us living in our home, how we are, why, like how we live Islam. Our living, our culture, it should reflect Islam. So then they see, this is what I want. So they choose that for themselves, but we cannot force that. And the result is up to Allah. We're going to be judged by our efforts, everything that we did. So it counts, everybody who's listening. You are trying to better yourself. So this counts as your effort. Going to therapy, getting mentors, talking to people, getting help, reading, taking things off of your list so you can sit with your child. Those are all efforts. And we renew our intentions for that, and inshallah, we'll be rewarded for that, no matter what the outcome is.
So let's take prayer as an example, and controlling the emotion as a second example. So, and maybe take something about education, okay? So let's say when I follow your suggested parenting path, which is nurturing the Fitrah in my children and in myself. So when I go through life and my child sees how I manage my own emotions, how I listen with mindfulness, how I'm gentle and kind, how I'm dialoguing, how I'm attentive to their needs, this in itself will be their future communication model because they lived through it with me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. When it comes to prayer, you're telling me that observe his attitude towards prayer, diagnose that, do what you have to do, you pray correctly, you understand prayer correctly, and eventually our children will pray on their own time and on their own pace.
Exactly.
Right?
And I would also share things about prayer that helped me, so I could say that, I woke up and I felt just tired, and, I was really upset. And then I prayed, you guys, and you know what? I just feel so much better. Making dua, it just comforts my heart, because no matter what happens, I know that Allah is listening to me. And I shared that one time with my son. And then a couple of weeks later, he said that, I really wanted this thing. And then I made dua, and then I woke up and I got it. So I said, yes, see, the dua is just so powerful. There's so many blessings just in that. And then I tell my son, I'm like, I wonder, like, I'm asking Allah for things. Why does Allah love that? Why does Allah love that I ask him? Absolutely. And there's just so many things I can talk about just in that, but just getting them curious and showing how I see Allah in my life. How am I interpreting what I'm learning, the prayer? How is that affecting me? So they see how relevant it is to everybody, to my mom, absolutely, to my dad.
Absolutely. I went through a very major traumatic event in my life, and prayer was the only thing that I believe carried me through it. And I noticed that even my children, close ones around me, because I was compulsively praying, as if it was, I really needed saving and help. And the turmoil passed. So I found that people automatically observed that prayer was the remedy without me giving lecture or saying, let me share my experience with you and so forth. So modeling that behavior with the true intention and with true meaning and true understanding will give us that. But if they don't love us, they will not follow us. And I love that was the second theme of the book for Dr. Gordon Neufeld. Hold on to your kids. They will not learn from you if you're screaming and shouting and you can't control your emotion. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that book.
Okay. So give the audience something that they can sleep on.
Okay. When our kids are older, imagine our kids older and they have something happened. Which child do you want your child to be? The one who says to his friend, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Don't tell my mom. My mom, my dad, Baba, Mama cannot know about this. Or do we want our child to be the one who says, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I have to call my mom. I have to tell Baba right now.
Beautiful.
Which child do you want? That's what we can work towards that. Absolutely. Do we want someone who's scared, who would hide things from us? Or do we want, even later on in their life, they're adults now and they have a family and they're contemplating on if they should go somewhere for a job or not. And they consult their spouse, and then they consult you. Do you want them to be that, like, you know, even they're 30, 40, and they're saying, Baba, you know, I want to consult with you on something? How would that make us feel? Or like a mother saying that, you know what, I'm going through something with my child. Can you help me? I want to talk to you about it. Do we want that relationship with them
Absolutely.
where they feel they're always coming to us because they see that we're a confidant, we're somebody that they can tell it, you know, and they tell us, because I know that you're going to give me really good advice.
Absolutely.
You're not going to yell or judge or anything. You're going to just, so do we want to be that kind of parents? And what are we doing now? Everything that we're doing now is leading up to that. Because right now we're planting seeds. We're planting seeds, whether it's good seeds, bad seeds. All we're doing, and we don't know which one is going to become a tree or a bush or a plant. We don't know. So we have to try to plant as many good seeds as we can.
And make sure that the environment is a nurturing environment to their core. And then this is what we do our part, and we leave the rest for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Rabbil Alameen.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Sister Shahnila, and I look forward to have few sessions in the future. Maybe next topic would be homeschooling.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. And you know, we're all doing our best, and we have to start where we are.
Inshallah.
And look at ourselves and be introspective and think, you know what, I need to start I can't stop loving my child. I have to nurture them. I have to stop yelling. I have to stop doing this. Start where you are and just work with someone, you know, getting information from you, learning from me, and reaching out to us. That really helps.
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. Wa iyaki. Ma as-salam.
Assalamu alaikum.